Hey everybody, it's Don. On this episode of The Naturalist, I'm in Logan, Ohio, visiting an iconic tree located in the old Logan Cemetery. So this episode is not so much about a place, not so much about a greater species. It's about an individual tree, an impressive, iconic tree located in this cemetery. That tree is the great white oak of Logan. And this tree is estimated to be 600 years old. It's a just impressive specimen perched atop a hill in the old Logan Cemetery. And we're gonna take a look at this tree and get up close and personal with it. All right, so let's go. All right, folks, let's start our journey, our approach to the great white oak of Logan. And again, this tree is in Logan, Ohio, which is the county seat of Hocking County. And this tree is just an amazing representative of the species, the white oak species. And I've learned about this tree, I don't know, through posts of various sorts over the years. And finally, just a few years ago, finally made a visit to it. And I visit this tree often, okay? Summer, spring, fall, winter. I'm here today on December 3rd, 2023. And this is a very interesting time to visit this tree because you can really see its bones, all right, without the foliage there. And it's just an impressive, gnarly old specimen, estimated to be 600 years old. And I'll talk more about how you figure that, but we're going to get some measurements on it. We're going to take a close look at it and just enjoy this thing because it's the largest white oak I've ever been near and oldest. Okay, now it is not the largest white oak in Ohio, but it's not far from it. Okay, now we're standing at this point about 90 feet away from the tree, and this is not a particularly tall tree. It's only, I would guess, about 65 feet tall, maybe 60 feet tall or so. I believe some of its top has been broken off in the past, but it just has a beautiful spread, huge arching branches, many of which are the size of trees, whole trees themselves. And it just stands guard over this little hilltop cemetery in Logan. So let's get a little bit closer to the Logan oak. Okay, this is a white oak, as I said, which is Quercus alba. And this species is among our oldest trees in the eastern US. Okay, these trees can reach about 1,000 years old. People find that hard to believe sometimes, but they can. And this one's been estimated to be 600, and it's just an impressive thing to be near. All right, so let's get a little bit up close to it. You can see around the base of this thing, it's flared out quite a bit. You know, it kind of has, flanges, so to speak. Not really buttresses exactly, okay, but it's all flared out at the base. Gnarly, thick bark, very deeply channeled. Okay, it's kind of a rough and ready tree. It's really healthy. When you see it in the summertime, it has a very full canopy, completely full canopy. So it is healthy at this point. But the Logan oak is hollow in parts inside. Okay, so that's becoming more obvious with time. The more I look at the tree, the more these little kind of holes open up that allow you to look into the inside of the tree somewhat. Here's one. I know it's dark, there's not much to see in there, but there's a hole that goes in deep toward the center of the trunk. And then over here is a kind of a little bit larger, maybe more concerning hole. But if you see that hole, I stuck a stick in there back in the spring and it went in about 2 feet. Okay, so this big tree is at least partially hollow inside. All right, now I've talked about how a lot of these huge ancient trees can be hollow inside, but they can stand for a long time like that. Okay, as long as the outer several inches of bark is healthy and the sapwood is healthy, the tree can stand, because the center of that tree is not really that important to the functioning of the tree. It plays a structural role, but it is not necessary in sort of like the water and nutrient conducting functions of the tree. So here's a really nice angle. It's getting a little brighter out here, which is making this look a little bit better. But just an incredible tree. We'll take some measurements here shortly, but let's take a look at some of the branches as well. And this is something that actually will benefit the Logan oak in the long term, in terms of its stability, is that these long arching branches that it has basically reach the ground, okay, in several locations. So these branches arch down, touch the ground, which will help brace this tree. I see that one's also hollow in there. Okay. Here's another spot, another large branch. If you looked at that branch, if it were standing upright, you'd think that's a pretty big old tree, right? That's just a branch off the great Logan oak. And again, it touches the ground over here. And the branch is completely alive and helping to brace this tree. So that's 2 points that where the tree is braced. Here's another spot over here. This is sort of a thinner end of a branch that touches over here, but it touches here. That's 3 points. All right. And then we have a few branches over here that are a few feet off the ground, but if the tree tilted, they would touch as well. So that's one thing about this tree, whether it's weak inside or not, it will be braced. It is braced. It's also a relatively short tree. You know, white oaks can reach 100 feet tall or more. And this one's more like in the order of 60 or 65, I think. Maybe a little higher than that. But it's not exceptionally tall. My guess is it had its top broken off at some point in a storm. I can see kind of a dead top up there. But all these large branches are very healthy, okay? It's very, just a gnarly old beast. I love this tree. So you really have to see it from lots of angles too, I think, to really appreciate it. It's really nice. Sun's coming out. I got a little bit of rain here, but that sun is nice. And so this is a particularly nice angle from this direction. Okay. Take a look at that tree. All right, now, as I said, this is the largest white oak that I've been ever up close to. I know some other large white oaks that we'll visit, but this is the largest. So let's go get a measurement on it. So when you measure trees, you take a measurement called the diameter at breast height. And that is considered to be about 4.5 feet off of the ground. And that's a location that gets you above this root flare, and a location that's more representative of the trunk proper. Okay, so I'm going to make some estimating, but 4.5 feet's about right here. All right, so I'm going to hook in my DBH tape. I have a tape that will measure either in circumference or on one side of the tape. On the other side, it automatically converts that circumference into a diameter. So I'll start with let's see, circumference first. Okay, with my circumference, basically comes out with a circumference of almost exactly 23 feet. Okay, now if I flip that over, it's just around 86 inches in diameter. Let's talk a little bit about what that means. Okay, so the great white oak of Logan behind me, we measured at 23 feet in circumference, which is about 276 inches in circumference. Those of you might know that to get the diameter of a cylinder, you take the circumference divided by pi, divided by 3.14. And that gives us a circumference that in feet, or diameter in feet measurements, it comes out to about 7 feet, 4 inches in diameter. So it is it's the biggest white oak I've ever measured. Okay, I know some others that are about 6.5 feet in diameter in Ohio. And again, this is not the largest, 276 inches in circumference. The largest is just a few inches larger than that, but it's impressive nonetheless. Okay, now let's talk a little bit about how that size relates to the age, the estimated age of this tree. Okay, so let's take another look at this tree and talk about its position, where it's been growing. Okay, and if we back up again and look at this tree and realize how stout a specimen this tree is, and how it has this low branching pattern. Okay, that suggests that this tree has been growing in the open for a long time. All right, now, obviously it's been in this cemetery. The reason this tree exists is it's protected in this cemetery. It's been such for well, a couple centuries. This cemetery, I believe, goes back to the early 1800s, 1830s or so. So for at least as long as the cemetery has been here, it's been growing in an open context, okay, with probably a lawn around it the entire time. But, you know, by the time they started this cemetery, this tree had already been here for hundreds of years. And this area was apparently probably also kind of open for centuries before. Now, most of Ohio was wooded. This entire area around here would have been largely forested, okay, before large-scale human occupation. Logan's a town of about, I believe, 6,000 or 7,000 people. It's been occupied for a couple hundred years. So yes, certainly this has been growing in the open since people really developed this area. But of course, Native Americans had been around this area for thousands of years, okay, before that. And so this area could have very well been open for a long time before this was ever a cemetery. You know, allowing this tree basically to spread its wings, as you can see. Trees that grow with competition in a forested setting usually don't have these low, long arching branches because they really emphasize putting their growth into height. Okay, and their lower branches often don't last long or die off as they basically prioritize putting resources at the top of the tree to try to outgrow the neighbors. All right, so this growth form is very indicative of an open grown tree. And that's also led to the relatively short stature of this tree. You know, forest-grown trees of even half the age of this tree could be twice the size, twice the height of this thing. So that's a little bit about its growth form, what you'd call its growth form, okay? Now let's talk about its age then. This tree has been estimated to be 600 years old. And I talk a lot about the age of trees and their size and things. I guess I have a little bone to pick with people because they don't want to believe how old these trees can be. So I made a post on a Facebook group I participated in recently where I profiled a 2-foot diameter white oak tree. And that tree was close to 200 years old. Okay, this tree had fallen, it was cut down, and I was able to count the annual rings and know exactly how old that tree was. And it was 200 years old, give or take 5. And it was only 2 feet in diameter. All right, and that was a tree growing in a pretty good location. Good spot for oaks to grow. So it was not in a poor location, which can lead to very slow growth and that sort of thing. Well, let's do some math, all right? You know, a 2-foot diameter white oak, roughly 200 years old. This is a nearly 7.5-foot white oak behind me, okay? You can just do the math yourself in that regard, okay? 4-foot diameter, might be 400 years old. 6-foot diameter, 600. This is 7.5. So calling this thing 600 years old in many regards is conservative. It's a conservative estimate, all right? There are white oaks that can be 1,000 years old, all right? And people are surprised by that, but they do exist. They did get by and escape and are preserved in certain places. All right, now this oak, I don't know whether that number was verified in any particular way. I have asked some questions about it, and I actually asked for permission to do some coring on it, but the folks who manage this tree and look after it didn't want me to do that. But my understanding is that there had been estimates made based on coring or those kinds of techniques in the past, and they'll just leave it at that. You know, coring doesn't really damage a tree. It's like I already showed you with the great white oak here. It's partially hollow inside already. You know, a small little hole from a coring tool isn't really gonna add any more problems to this tree than it might have already. But nonetheless, you know, I can live by the rules. But anyhow, what you would do, there's no coring tool you're gonna find that will penetrate the whole way to the center of this tree. Most coring tools might be 18 inches long at best, maybe 2 feet long at best. So you have to take a core, pull it out, count the rings on the core, and then do some extrapolation, okay, to get you the total number of annual rings that you can see there that would be in the entire radius of the tree, from the center of that tree out to the outer edge, okay? So anyhow, 600 years old, surprises some people. I just read a piece today where someone wants to say, oh, it's probably only 250 or 300. No way, okay? Much older than that, much older. Other things that come with age are this, you know, this knurling, this base that I had shown you earlier. And you have a lot of large trees develop root flare, sometimes in the form of buttresses, okay, that are more flange-like, that stick out. Or this one is more like a kind of a giant burl that just surrounds the trunk of this tree at the base. And this is basically a reaction to, you know, large size and old age, and it will help support the tree. Okay, you can see it basically just provides a pedestal for the trunk of this tree to sit on, and will help this thing remain upright. Okay, so that's the function of that kind of structure you see there. Now, the fate of this tree is I look at, you know, these holes and such in this this dead wood. I can see that there have been insects working on this, okay? Probably carpenter ants. And there's maybe all sorts of manner of things that go in there and live in there. Things like carpenter ants, though, don't kill trees. This is another misnomer. And what carpenter ants do is chew into soft, dead wood or soft, wood in your house, usually that's moist. It's gotten moistened for some reason. You have a leak in your roof or what have you. And they basically chew the wood out and put their nests in there. Okay, they don't eat wood. They don't eat live wood, especially, okay, or dry, new wood. They like wet, moist, old, dead wood, okay? And they chew into that to build their nests, to raise their young. Carpenter ants are actually basically omnivores. They go out and harvest, they collect anything they can find to eat and take it back to the nest. They don't eat wood, all right? But I do see evidence that things like carpenter ants have been in this dead wood of the great white oak of Logan, okay? So now oaks in general are extremely valuable to wildlife and biodiversity because of all the things they provide, namely their acorns, for one. Okay, a tree like this has probably produced in its lifetime, tens of millions, 10 million acorns in its lifetime. Given how old it lives, a big year for a tree could be 10,000 acorns in a year. One that's this size, probably a lot more than that, okay, in 1 year. But then you add that up over, 600 years, you got a pretty impressive number of acorns there, okay? So lots of things feed on acorns of oaks, deer, birds, turkeys, blue jays, squirrels, chipmunks, what have you, okay? Rodents, other rodents. But things eat their leaves, okay? Importantly, these are the leaves of the great white oak. Let's see. Here's a nice, really characteristic white oak leaf. Okay, rounded lobes, no bristles on the tips. Okay, this is the poster child for the white oak group of oaks. And, oaks support up to like 400 different species of butterflies or moths that eat their leaves as caterpillars. Okay, so they're incredibly important for things like lepidopterans. And of course, those things are important for birds and mice and all sorts of manner of things that eat caterpillars or eat the butterflies. Okay, so they're a keystone species that really supports an entire food web, essentially, okay? And a tree like this, if you want to put a value on it, imagine how long it's been doing that, okay? For, 600 years. It's just insane to think about almost. Okay, so I just love this tree. It's just another long distance view of the great white oak from a little distance away. Of course, as is usual, when I walked over here, I saw something else I'd like to show you, which is interesting. Something we haven't touched upon yet on the Naturalist. Let's take a look at another tree that's has the great fortune of growing near the great white oak. Okay, this is another native fruit producing tree in North America, but one that people have heard of, but they don't know much about necessarily, okay? And this is a persimmon tree. So let's take a look. Okay, there's a persimmon fruit. There's some others. Okay, these look fully ripe. So I'm gonna pick one. Yeah, they're very soft. Okay, there's persimmon fruit. Okay, persimmons are really sweet, edible. I'm gonna taste it. they have a very, persimmons have a very plum or prune kind of flavor to them. And they're very rich in tannins. All right, now I see that this tree has a lot of persimmons up there still. Well, you can see that, and I have a very dry, astringent taste in my mouth right now, okay, which is very common after eating persimmons, especially if they're not super ripe. They've got to be really ripe to the point where those tannins start to break down. Okay, you might be familiar with tannins as this chemical property that gives, you know, dry wines their astringency, their dryness. Okay, I'm finding it hard to even talk right now. All right. And so if you eat too many persimmons, those tannins can cause a problem for you. Okay. So what tannins do, tannins are defenses for the plant. Okay, they help the plant defend against herbivores and, you know, having their leaves and fruits being eaten. And trust me, the way my mouth feels right now, I wouldn't want to come back and eat a persimmon that that wasn't ripe either. Okay, and so, but how tannins work though is they are outside of this astringent, dry feature they give to your mouth feel, you know, they will bind proteins in your gut, in your belly. Okay, they'll bind them into, you know, kind of an indigestible mass and, you know, give you indigestion, make you want to stop eating, and basically serve and not allow you to get the protein out of that fruit or leaf material that you were intending to get when you ate it in the first place. Okay, so now in humans, if you eat too many persimmons or other fruits or plant material that have a high tannin content, you can get something called a bizarre, B-E-Z-O-A-R, bizarre. And now what that is this big mass of basically plant material, undigested proteins, probably carbohydrates, all bound together into just a large mass that basically, this large indigestible hard mass that will stay in your stomach and cause you problems especially once it gets large enough. Okay, it can lead to intestinal blockages and things like that. Okay, so there are cases of people eating particularly unripe persimmons, and which led to bizarre formation. Okay, which is caused them a lot of problems. And now, I like persimmons, but you really like the one I ate really gave me that terrible mouthfeel. You really have to eat them when they're very ripe only. Okay, so they almost have to look rotten practically before they're ready to eat. But if you get to that point, yeah, again, they have a real figgy, plummy, jam type consistency and flavor to me. All right, so I actually like them. Okay, but these are clearly not ready to be eaten. You can also tell that the wildlife know this too. Okay, or there wouldn't be so many of these fruits still on this tree. Okay, birds would have been picking these things apart if they felt like it, if they were edible. But at the moment, this tree is covered by persimmons. Now, one of the things I really like about persimmons is they have one of the most interesting barks of any tree, one of my favorite barks of any tree. Okay, they have a real blocky, almost alligator skin-like bark. Okay, and it looks like there are literally blocks all glued together, pasted on the trunk of the tree. Okay, so I think that's a really unique ornamental feature of persimmons. All right, and so for those of you who might be watching this from Yellow Springs, there's a persimmon tree planted, growing right next to Tom's Market's parking lot. Okay, so you can see a persimmon up close if you just look to your right as you drive up or walk up the little alley into the parking area behind Tom's Market. All right, so that's persimmon. And this is a persimmon that has the great fortune of growing right near the great white oak of Logan. All right, so that's going to wrap up my segment here, this episode of The Naturalist, featuring the great white oak of Logan, which I've repeated now about 30 times. I'll revisit this tree again in spring and in summer when it's fully leafed out and take a look at its spring and summer glory. But I'm really happy to bring this tree to your attention because it's really worth a visit just to spend some time underneath its canopy. All right, see you again. Bye-bye.